over there tonight. Will you join me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Laura, you're first up on the agenda.
Good evening, Garrison. Nice to see you all. Just quickly, reminder of the board meetings. We have one in January. We'll have one January 24th, and that will be at O'Neill High School. And we have one on February 5th, and that will take place at the house.
Your copy of that contract is in your package. I assume that's for students at the master's school. And item E, appoint piano accompanist. That is approve the appointment of Helen Marie Conrad as piano accompanist for the winter concert, including rehearsal, December 12 and 13, 2018, in the amount of $200. And lastly, approve child care leave for Stacy Ritchie, elementary teacher, effective on or about February 27th through May 17th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on that? This is about as straightforward as they get.
2 points on the Ricky thing. In the agenda item detail, it says approved childcare for Stacy Ricky, which as opposed to childcare leave, just a little type omission. Because if you want to approve childcare for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. But at the same time, what is the strategy for that? Is there a leave replacement situation going on?
Yes, we'll have to start a search.
Okay, so it's search, it's not,
It's not just a substitute.
we're not in-house, or, I mean, no, it's a search. Okay,
It's a search, so leave replacement.
all right, great.
We may also be able, since we had various processes, but we did also back in the summer have the 5th grade process. So with any luck there, a lot of time has elapsed, so when we do post, potential is that those candidates may in fact be interested as well. So, but it will be a process.
Okay, great. And in that case, if there are no more questions, all those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. We have one discussion item, and that is to review committee minutes. Those are from the Facilities Committee and the Technology Committee. The Facilities Committee, those are the minutes, but we discussed at length the recommendation of the committee at our last meeting. Unless someone wants to add to that, that's a subject that's been fairly well ventilated, I think.
Can I add a point to that?
Yeah, sure.
We did meet during that committee. It was around the out-of-date wireless systems that we have here, and the need for the increase of wireless due to the number of computers we had added to the school. So Sue, Alex, Nancy, and I met with EduTech and Fortinet, who can provide services for rewiring access points throughout the building, and they came to us with a quote about $60,000 to $62,000. And we think that with some of the grant money that we have, such as Smart Schools, Smart Bond, and possibly exploring new internet services that may help save some money, we may be able to have about half of the $62,000. And then we would have to dip into our technology budget line, which we can cover most of it, but not all of it. But we hope that if we're able to find this funding, we would be able to rewire during our February break.
So it would be current school year budget.
Correct.
Is that the best strategy? I don't remember this coming up, but is this, is it a need to do it this year, or is this something?
Yeah, I mean, it's the technology portion, if you recall, the facilities, we took it out of facilities because there was more of an urgency to try to address that.
Right, we're doing other techie things in there, but not this particular one.
Yeah, we actually took a lot of the technology out of the capital project because the thought of waiting 2 or 3 years, we are experiencing a lot of dropping going on. We don't have enough wireless access points throughout the building. We've added a lot more devices over the last couple of years, and that really isn't the problem. I think the problem is that the devices themselves are old and need to be replaced, and so additional wiring also needs to be done to reach every single classroom. So
It's a little bit about is it about the processors within the devices and the speed of the processors and the devices?
That's my understanding,
Or
is
their memory?
that the wireless access points themselves are
Okay.
already going on 5 years old.
Right.
They're just, losing their own, so to speak, so, and we're experiencing even as an administrator, we're in meetings and we're dropping. So it's, you can imagine having a classroom full of, students trying to work on something and then you're dropping your access. So it's something I think we really need to address, and that's why we pulled it out of the capital project.
And the
Kind of
state is
address it earlier.
slowly moving to online state testing too, so it would be wise to get things prepared.
So if we do the wiring in February and get this up to date, when do you come to us to approve the contract?
That would probably be at the next board
Next
meeting.
So that's, we can expect to see that. All right, terrific. Was that, by the way, facilities or technology committee? It
That
sounds
was
like it both.
technology.
Oh, technology.
We've already
Did I
jumped
say
a little
facilities?
bit.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
Sorry, technology.
That's why I didn't remember it coming up in
Right.
facilities.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Must have dozed off there.
Any questions or comments on that? It seems pretty straightforward.
The facilities committee, I guess, one of the things exploring is solar possibilities that might be entering into the mix at some point. So I think that's the beginning of a discussion. There's no conclusions about it.
There's nothing else on the review of committee minutes. We have 2 action items, and one is the budget calendar. That's in your package, but I'll ask Laura or Sue just to top line it, but let me read the resolution first. Resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District hereby adopts the 2019-2020 budget calendar.
So moved.
Just take us through the key dates.
Let's see, we'll have our first budget overview January 9th. Budget workshop for the community and parents is February 12th. And that's in the evening at 7 p.m. We have in March on March 6th, we have another review and discussion of the budget. And then we have our workshop 2 and 3, one on March 9th and March 14th for the community and parents to come in to hear what we're thinking, but also to have their voices heard and welcome recommendations, suggestions, and things to think about as we build our budget for the 2019-2020 school year.
Any questions on the calendar? If not, all those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. We have one resolution, that's to extend the services of our friends at Tetra Tech who have been indispensable to the progress we've made so far on the capital project. This will take us up through the referendum. The resolution is the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District accepts the December 11, 2018 proposal from Tetra Tech Architects and Engineers for pre-referendum architectural and engineering services.
So moved.
Do I have a second? What's the, sorry, is it in your package? It must be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is there, sorry. How much were they asking?
9,500.
95, okay.
It's really for all of the work they have done to this point and moving us towards the referendum.
Got it. Questions or comments on that? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays. We have public comment. Any members of the public are welcome to join us now. Good
Hi,
evening.
this is my second time speaking here, so.
You okay?
Yes.
Terrific.
My name is Madeline Julian. The first time I spoke was, to talk about the renovation project. I'm also an architect. And, mom of Max and Mal Julian. So they're twin boys, 6-year-old. They're in first grade, we're mixed cats. So today I'm talking about something totally different, and I think it's something that everyone here has the same interest in, and that's safety during recess. There was an incident that happened on Monday with Miles that raised the alert and the concern to the point that he's scared to go to school. So I spoke with Mr. Levine and Laura a couple of times, at least twice this week, and this afternoon with both of them. They are working on it, and it's a joint venture partnership, so I'm reaching out to the board for help. One of the things that came up is the budget, and that they would need to look at next year and this year what to do about recess. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, this is emotional. Miles was pinned to the floor by another student. He's 6 years old, by another 6-year-old student, and facing down on the floor and hit several times, to the point that he had to go to the nurse. He had a couple of pain throughout the body. So when Mr. Levine called me and my husband, we asked that he spoke to speak with Miles. And that was already later in the morning. And I asked Miles if he was okay. He still had pain in the neck, in the arm, in the leg. And it lasted throughout the day. By the time he got home, he was still feeling a little bit of pain, but not as bad. And I do not want to put any attention on the student that did this, because at the end of the day, what we need is for all the students to come to a safe environment and learn. What I think really needs to be considered on the budget for next year, and also whatever can be done this year, is how much aid and resource can be put into recess, or the times when the teachers are doing, I guess, the public time, with doing other stuff outside from class. After speaking with both Laura and Mr. Levine, my understanding is that there are 2 aides assigned during recess for 2 classes. So right now, it's first grade and kindergarten, so that's close to 45 students that range between 5 years old and 6.5 years old for 2 aides in a yard outside. So if someone is in need, it's just, I see it as a safety hazard. I really strongly suggest whatever help, support you can provide to the school, just to increase the number of aides, to see or replan the way that recess is done into, you had mentioned that before, you had maybe 3 aides, and sometimes they would be broken down into smaller groups. Whatever is possible, just to maintain the safety of the young kids, and to regain confidence in our kids, to come back and not have to be scared that they're going to be hit.
Madeline, did the aides not see what was happening?
So I wasn't here, so I don't know the details. My understanding is that this time around, it was an indoor recess. And I just want to make sure that Ms. Katz is the teacher, and she's been great. So I don't know how many aides were there at that time. I just really think that this should be taken into consideration, and whatever can be done before the budget would be greatly appreciated. And I'm here as a partner, not anything else. And at the same time, we understand that kids are kids, and they have to learn and figure things out on their own, but there's a balance, and I think we have to make sure that that line is never crossed.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Crystal?
Thank you, Madeline. So the PTA held a meeting last Thursday, and we decided to pass our own resolution. It's a resolution to eliminate plastic and reduce our solid waste. So basically, we do hot lunch just once a month now, but we also do events, and we thought it would be important to tackle our use of plastic and sort of, sort of make a statement for the children. So I figure I'll just read you the resolution we passed. So whereas the production of plastic creates greenhouse gases contributing to climate change, whereas the unsound management of solid waste is one of the most serious environmental problems given its high negative impact on natural resources and human health, whereas heightening environmental awareness from an early school age can help establish good habits, resolved that it's necessary to foster a culture at school aimed at alleviating the environmental and societal problems caused by trash. Resolved that the GUFS PTA will aim to eliminate plastic disposable straws, plates, cups, and utensils. Resolved that the GUFS PTA will reduce the amount of disposable items it uses in school events or hot lunch, and when not possible to use reusable items, we will source from items that are from sustainable materials. Resolved that the GUFS PTA will encourage the use of reusable water bottles, and resolved that the GUFS PTA will compost whenever possible, and hopefully we'll be able to do that in partnership with our 7th and 8th graders later on in the next year. And then lastly, we'll be selling water bottles, stainless steel water bottles, basically at cost to the students. And hopefully,
The last one. No. It's perfectly
I also find that the bottles are like this nice blue and like school pride, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing people carrying the water bottles. And I actually had someone in the community who doesn't go to the school, and she's like, when can I buy a water bottle? So I thought that was very sweet. And that's basically it on the PTA front. We have stuff coming up next year, but I'm going to go into that now. So
My personal commitment to Crystal is that from henceforth I will either be dry or drinking from one of those. I think it makes perfectly good sense.
We have new drinking fountains, correct?
yeah, the water.
So maybe the board can take a first step by no longer having bottled water at our tables, and we can get it right from the faucet.
I have a picture over there too.
Perfect.
I just bring it.
So
And thank you. And
that'll
thank
be
you for
our
all your-
that'll be our small symbolic contribution.
My personal pet peeve about these things, and notwithstanding the environmental damage that they inflict, is that we pay a nickel recycling fee for every one of these bottles, which if you look at the actual cost of the bottle relative to the nickel of the fee, puts the effective tax rate on these things somewhere about 50%.
Can I ask
Part
one
of those
question?
50 mentioned.
They're nuts. They're
Great, I applaud all of that. With, in terms of using more sustainably found items for hot lunch, and I've heard about this from my kids, bamboo utensils, etc. Obviously, unfortunately, all that stuff is more expensive.
Yes.
Where's PTA gonna find the money for it?
Well, it's funny that you should ask that question. I was actually going to ask, since there's like $4,000 in found lunch money, is it possible that we do a bulk purchase that could be used for both the 8th grade hot lunch and the PTA hot lunch? If we found a really good supplier and we could buy wholesale for the whole year, and that would be that. And then that's what the 8th grade, that's what, if there's a teacher staff event, PTA, it's just a communal supply. Instead of we buy our own, the 8th grade buy their own, it's kind of like a mishmash of stuff if you go into the
For
kitchen.
how little you actually
For how little we actually use. So we could just find like a good supplier and buy in bulk and probably save a lot more money than just buying like 20 plates here and there.
I'm going to violate my, at the risk of doing something not board level. Are these single-use utensils you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but they're not plastic.
Yeah,
I get
but
that.
there's like, you can get it either from corn or bamboo or, yeah.
I was just going to ask about washing them in the store.
Oh, but
A
yeah.
single-use,
Well, the
got it.
dishwasher I heard was like a whole other
Yeah.
level, so we're just trying to focus on what
Got
we
it,
can
got it,
do.
okay. Just a matter of idle curiosity. Thank you,
Thank
Kristen.
you.
That's great. And thank you for the bottles,
You're
too.
welcome.
Other comments, please?
Crystal, just want to note my stainless steel water bottle. Nice to see you all again. My name is Eric Arnold.
Mr. Arnold, if you
Yes.
don't mind, just a prefatory note is probably in order here. only because, no,
Oh,
my
yours,
preference.
okay, sure, yeah.
If only because you and the board have been in sporadic contact since, well, a little more than 3 years now when you first approached us. I have a letter from you from November 2015, which we replied to. It was at that point you introduced yourself and the fact that you were a Garrison resident who discovered after the fact that you resided in the Lakeland School District. And since then, you've approached us from time to time to discuss, among other things, an NRT proposal. You worked with the Phillipstown Community Congress in identifying priorities, one of which was consolidation, not necessarily NRT, but consolidation. That position has since evolved to include an NRT as a means to approaching or getting towards consolidation of districts like Garrison and Haldane. In the course of doing this, you put up an online petition seeking to, I guess, request the Garrison board adopt an NRT proposal. Presumably, you're here tonight to give us an update on where that petition stands.
That's correct.
If you would do that, that would be great.
Yep, so I have a prepared statement. I hope you can just take a couple minutes.
If it includes an update on the status of the petition.
It does.
And of particular interest to the board, I think, would be how many of the signatories to that petition are actually residents of and taxpayers in the Garrison Unit Free School District.
It's all here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to read the full statement. I know you'll have comments and questions at the end, so
Will
if
do.
you please hold them for that, I'd appreciate it. So as you covered, my family and I live here in Garrison, about a 6-minute drive from where we meet tonight. And I first approached the Garrison board, as you mentioned, a little over 2 years ago, at least in person, to find more information about how my son, now sons, plural, might be able to attend this school, even though our house is running to the Lakeland District by a couple hundred yards. Over time, more board meetings here with you, not to mention ample research, a meeting and emails with the Lakeland superintendent, plus several conversations with the New York Department of Educational Services. I came to understand that the best, easiest, and most benign solution, as you mentioned, would be to ask that you, the Garrison Free School District, adopt and implement what's known as a non-resident tuition policy, or NRT. At the last 2 board meetings that I attended and inside conversations with some of you, since then I was told that in order for the board to consider voting on an NRT, that I needed to demonstrate broad community support for this idea, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight. And I would like to recap how we got here, because as you mentioned, the Phillipstown Community Congress, because there is a little bit more detail there that needs to be shared. So about a year ago, the Phillipstown Community Congress held a vote on which issues are most important to local residents. Schooling ranked very high on that list, and a working group of us assembled around this issue. And as we came together, it comprised some strange bedfellows at first, representing all 3 Phillipstown's districts. And we ultimately worked through the complexity and initial competing interests to realize that our efforts must consider and recognize 4 major points. First is to adhere to a mission statement, which is kids who grow up in Phillipstown playing and attending preschool together should have the opportunity to be educated together. The second thing is expanding school access can be central to strengthening the Phillipstown community as a whole. Third, no initiative that we undertake to help some Phillipstown kids and families can come at the expense of others. 4, and this one I think is most critical, is that we have to recognize the sacrifices and dedication that you, the elected members of the board, make on others' behalf. What you guys do is hard, and we must acknowledge to ourselves, to you, and to the community at large that what we're asking for is neither easy nor insignificant. And I want to stop and highlight that for a moment, because at the initial Phillipstown Community Congress meeting, when I say there were strange bedfellows, I really do mean that. There were a ton of competing interests. A lot of them were about consolidation, and a lot of the ideas that people brought up, they were completely ill-informed, and they thought something, and which I get, this is a hard issue, but people thought that consolidation is this really easy thing, it's this magic wand, but they didn't understand the tax implications. They didn't understand a whole host of other issues that would negatively impact Garrison. And so some of us who were there really fought with the others to help them understand that just because they wanted certain things, they didn't realize that those would come at the expense of other people. So that was something that we really pressed hard on and have continued to press hard on throughout the life of the petition. So what ultimately emerged from our working group was a platform document, which I believe most of you have read. and that document was ratified in a vote with almost no opposition. Now, it's worth noting that this document was also read closely by
I'm sorry, who ratified this?
all of the people in the Phillipstown Community Congress who initially attended that meeting were all given the opportunity to vote on it.
So the 87 or so people that expressed an interest were the ones who approved the policy statement?
Those people then were given the opportunity through the Phillipstown Community Congress to vote. Not all of them did, but among those who did, there were almost no opposition votes. There were 2. And they were for a couple of strange reasons, which I can get into if you want, but it's not really worth it. So I would also like to note that this document was read closely by our Assemblywoman, Sandy Galiff, who called me specifically to express her support for our approach. She also sends her regards that she wasn't able to be here tonight because she had to be an alternate. So the immediate first step, as expressed in that platform document, was to launch the petition, which you mentioned, advocating that the district or that the board vote on adopting and implementing a simple, straightforward NRT policy consistent with others in the area, such as Haldane's. It should also be limited specifically to Phillipstown residents, because one of the things that I've discussed with you and with other people is they said, well, what if just someone from whatever part of New York wants to show up here with a checkbook and wanting to pay tuition? You don't have to do that. You can actually limit it to Phillipstown residents. So in total, the signatures on the petition span all 3 of Phillipstown districts: 21% from Garrison, 37% from Haldane, and 42% from Lakeland. The total is 62 people who signed. I think we probably would have done better had we not launched it during the midterm elections.
What's
But
the Garrison percentage again, I'm sorry?
Garrison percentage is 21%.
21% of 62?
Yep.
Okay.
So among those who signed the petition are a couple of people you see here tonight. About 62 total, both current and former members of this board, as well as elected members of the Phillipstown board. Lest we delve too far into the details here, I do have a copy of Haldane's one-page NRT policy that I just wanted to hand out to you guys. You can pass it around. Here you go. And the second page is a rendering that shows, as an example, how simple Garrison's policy can be and remain consistent with NRT policies used by districts for many miles in every direction. If you look around, most of the policies are pretty similar to this. So, given that the support for the school adopting an NRT policy is now significantly larger than just this guy coming to meetings on and off for a few years, I and fellow members of the community would like to ask that you not only draft and vote on the NRT policy, but also hopefully communicate the next necessary steps and timeline for doing so. Again, I would like to express that I know that we are asking a lot of you, and that adopting an NRT policy is easy, and implementing it is challenging. But I and you are forever consumed by improving our kids' education and development. I hope that we also share in the belief that as parents we can be innovative and creative in solving a long-standing problem, not just for the benefit of our kids and the community in the here and now, but to set an example and a mark that our kids can one day surpass. I want to thank you again for your time and attention on this matter, and thank you to the specific board members and members of the community who offered advice and expressed their support. So if you have any questions or comments.
Just on the petition, because I think we're most interested in hearing about. 62 signatories. 21% were Garrison residents.
Correct.
But you can't tell from that which of those addresses or residents are in the Garrison Union Free School.
Those are in the Garrison Union.
That's in the
Garrison district. Yeah.
In the Garrison district. Okay,
Garrison
one of those.
district.
So 21%, roughly 12.
Yeah, 12 or 13, I believe. Yeah.
Signed this petition. Okay.
Eric, did you say that some current members of this board signed it?
That's correct.
Who is that?
You. I emailed it to you, and there was a form to fill out, and it came through with your email address, and it said, yes, I support this. So maybe it's possible you did it unknowingly, but more than happy to remove your name if that's
Yeah,
the case.
because I really was wondering.
Okay.
So we've got 11. Not to 11. Sorry.
11 or 12.
The Phillipstown Community Congress did its survey and identified its priorities a year or so ago. They accepted proposals for priority proposals from anyone over 13 years of age, or anyone could propose and anyone could vote on anyone over 13. they estimated that that represented about 8,182 potential respondents. Those are, according to census data, those over the age of 13 in Phillipstown.
I don't actually have anything.
I do.
I thought it was closer to 700 total.
No,
total votes,
755 were the qualified respondents that you got. So of those, 134 ranked school consolidation, not necessarily NRT, but
No, that's true.
consolidation
It ultimately became
as a top 3 priority. I understand how the idea evolved. 87 of the 134 were interested in exploring. 27% or 27%, according to Mr. Angel's data, 27% were Garrison residents who identified this as a top 3 priority. That's 36 individuals. So the 8,182, Mr. Angel is very clear, and I understand entirely, that this was not meant to be a poll as such. It was a self-selecting sample, not necessarily representative of community-wide attitudes, not statistically projectable against the entire community. But you're still left with less than 1/2 of 1% of your respondents who are residents of the Garrison Union Free School District who've expressed an interest in this. And even going further than that, the number of Garrison Union Free School District residents who responded to the opportunity to present the board with a petition was only 11 individuals. So from my own perspective, I won't speak from the rest of the board, it is hardly a mandate for us to change a policy which, other than the Congress's and the Congress's committee's subsequent articulation of the priority, is hardly a mandate for us to
And nobody is suggesting, Ray, that it's a mandate.
No, but
What I'm asking is, if you give me a moment, is you asked when I came to another meeting, you said, there's no bill that they will come.
Right.
So some people came, and some other members of the board said, you know what, just get a few people together and show that there's support for the idea. And that's what I've done. Now, on top of that, another thing that's really important to explain here is that most people don't want to read, okay? And they don't want to read during an election when the news is dominated by other things. I can't tell you how many people I've brought this to who ultimately didn't sign the petition because they forgot or they had other issues to worry about, because we all do, who said, that makes perfect sense. I don't understand why they would fight you on this or why this would be so difficult. And I said, look, I don't know, and then when I would go through and explain the issue, they would say, okay, that makes perfect sense, but what about consolidation? Or I would bring it up and hand them the document, and they'd say, oh, is this about school consolidation? How do my taxes come down? This is a very complicated issue to explain to people, and once they do understand it, they say, oh, this makes perfect sense. So I think forgive me, but all the times I've come here, I'm owed an explanation as to what your opposition is, because I've asked at multiple meetings to you specifically, what is the issue? What is the difficulty here? And you've never given me an answer, not once.
I will say for my fellow board members, our obligation is to this first, and our duty are to the students of the Garrison Union Free School District and to the taxpayers of the Garrison Union Free School District. That is the extent, that is what we are duty bound to. And other than the 12 people you've identified who are Garrison Union Free School District taxpayers, who said this might be something worth considering.
They didn't say might be, they signed, they said yes.
Other than those 12, only one of them, not even you, because you're not a resident of the district, we have not heard from, other than when you show up and represent that they've signed the petition, one of whom has not.
I know we ran into each other in trade with this, but I wasn't aware that this was.
I mean, unless somebody used your email address and signed for you, which is entirely possible.
Mr. Arnold, I would say this, and I'm speaking only for myself. This board has a number of important priority issues that it has before us, and we have limited time and limited resources within which to consider them. Principal among them are getting a bond issue passed, which is also quite complex, which has also taken up a considerable amount of time of the board. So absent a more demonstrative expression of interest from the taxpayers, residents of the Garrison Union Free School District, my recommendation to the board is that we table this matter sine die, which is to say, not in, sine die, without anticipation of taking it up again. I would just say, by the way, the problem that you're seeking to solve, or the solution that you're presenting, it seems to be in search of a problem. We are not by any means eccentric in the fact that we in Phillipstown have 3 school districts represented in the district. In fact, within just a few miles of Garrison, Phillipstown, we have, just a very quick, a preliminary check. Town of Bedford has 3 school districts, the town of Mount Kisco has 2, Newcastle has 3, North Castle has 2, Patterson 2, Putnam Valley 3, Southeast 3, Yorktown 3. We stay as a board fairly up to date on what's going on in neighboring districts, and I'll speak only for myself, but I'm not aware of any clamor in those districts to solve a problem like the one you've identified.
I think this comes down to semantics. You're looking at a 30,000-foot view. The first districts on those lists, most of them are top 20 school districts in the state. They don't actually necessarily have a problem. If you're in Chappaqua or Mount Kisco, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the situation for you is pretty good no matter what. The taxes that you're paying, you're getting a fantastic education experience whether you're living on this side of the line or that side of the line. We're talking about a very different educational experience between Lakeland and Garrison, number 1. Number 2, to go back to your earlier point about building support, I would go back to Diana's comment when I came to another meeting. She said, what's he supposed to do? Go knocking on doors? Number 3, I mean, again, what we're trying to solve here is 2 problems. One is to build a stronger community, which again, members of this board have told me that they see that this is a good step in the right direction for that. Number 2, you guys are about to spend $7 million. What we're talking about is money that can come into this district to help solve other problems. Our money is green at Haldane. Haldane has its tuition policy. Our money is green at Manitou. Why is it not green here, is the question.
Well, firstly, let's distinguish between Haldane and Manitou. And as regards Haldane, you can tell me, I'm not sure, I'm not aware of residents of Garrison in the Lakeland School District who are tuitioning their kids into Haldane and also paying Lakeland school taxes.
There are some. They're mostly from Beacon who pay tuition at Haldane, but it's not like it's unprecedented. And also, I mean, no offense, but I don't think you can plead ignorance on this issue because when I came to the first board meeting I came to, it was, and even the second one, it was like, oh, we have to develop a policy, and that's just the resources we don't have. And it wasn't until I went and researched this that I found that the policies are actually rather simple. It's 1 page, that's it. It's 3 paragraphs. This is a copy-paste job, that's it. So, I mean, to me, to be perfectly honest, to say that you're up to speed with what all of the other districts do is just not factually correct based on the other meetings that I've come to.
Any other questions for Mr. Arnold? Thank you very much. Go, James. Go ahead.
I'm sort of, I don't know, I don't think anybody's up to speed on anything, so, myself included. But the NRT rate, the NRT policy, it's not a question of whether we adopt the policy, it's a ramification of adopting any policy. And also, what it signals to other people, not just to the residents of, particular residents that you're expecting to carve out. So I'm sort of sympathetic to the consideration. I'm sympathetic to if people want to pay taxes someplace and pay a rate to come to our school because they see it as an attractive thing. I can see the positives to that. I can see some possible downsides, but because you're going to be saying no to some families and saying yes to other families. Do we accept all comers, no matter who they are or what they are?
No, it's in the policy. It's up to Laura to decide who gets to come and who doesn't.
That's right.
Up until
And the ability for that to be perceived as discriminatory in one way or another, class, religion, race.
Do you see that happening all around us? No. I mean,
I think I do see discriminatory policies on race, class, and all around me all the time.
Of course, but are you seeing that specifically regarding NRT in the Hudson
I
Development School District.
think if,
There's no precedent.
I'm saying that the ability for that to be perceived from, well, why did this person get to go to Garrison? And why did you say no to this family?
Isn't it a worse perception to say no to everybody?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's, I'm not sure. I'm just saying that there are reasons you would say no because maybe it's not a good fit. Or maybe the person, after interviewing, you think the family's hostile to the public school system. You just don't like them. The ability to control that message is very difficult. I'm just saying that's a complication. I'm not saying it's inconsistent with adopting an NRT policy. It's just something one has to be mindful of. The other thing to be mindful of is that I don't buy the whole NRT as a way of unifying Phillipstown, only because we accept students from Putnam Valley. That's part of the Garrison School District. And so are they not part of the Phillipstown community because they're from Putt Valley, even though they attend our school? We already accept out of Phillipstown residents. We actually don't accept some Phillipstown residents, but we accept out of. So I don't buy that argument completely. I buy the sentiment of unifying Phillipstown in many ways. I don't buy this particular mechanism as a way of doing it. Does that mean we shouldn't adopt such a mechanism? I don't think so. I don't think that's a reason against it. I'm just saying I don't think it's congruent.
Well, I never said that it was the end all be all.
I know, but there's a lot of rhetoric in some of this stuff.
Sure.
So I just wanted to clear that out. But, I'm not opposed to it. I think that, I'm not opposed to it because I think that there are times where admits to the school is beneficial for the social well-being of the school. We have some classes that are very small, and I think if we could admit a few 2 students or 3 students into the mix, that could help out the social dynamic within a particular class setting. Maybe if we have for instance, if we have one class that has very few males in it, and we could accept 2 or 3 boys from outside, I think that would be a possible good thing.
He's
We
got
2
two.
of them.
He's got 2.
Right. My point being, right? So there are reasons that we might to lay out there. There might be inherent reasons within the Garrison district, enrollment dynamics, demographic dynamics, that we would want to include people. Issues of diversity, perhaps. Issues of, other people from outside the district, right? So.
I get so concerned though that gets into the picking and choosing.
Yes.
Oh, I do too.
And another concern, similarly, while we have, might be a really small class, and it'd be great to bring in some more, we've also have classes where literally 1 or 2 new enrolled kids flips the shape and the size of the classroom, and all of a sudden we have to break up the class and hire a second teacher.
Yeah, and look,
We
again,
could say
it's
no
also-
to that.
or
Right.
You could say no.
It's-
You
No,
can
I
say no to
understand.
me
It's
when
just-
the time comes.
It's
too.
just interesting to think about.
It's a
all of these.
complication. It's not inconsistent. I'm not pushing back on the logic of it. I'm pushing back on some of the complicating factors that would give one pause.
I would say to my earlier
That's all.
statement, the policy is the easy part. I know that implementing it is hard, and I know what we're asking is hard. And this is a process that I and my neighbors would like to be a part of long term, not to just have you guys pass a policy and walk away.
I think the policy isn't necessarily the easy part, because the policy would have to be worded to be inclusive. I don't agree with us picking and choosing, like we need 2 boys, so we're only gonna accept, I don't agree with that. It's a public school, they knock on our doors, we accept them. So I think the policy would have to encompass.
I'm sorry, I
No, it's
interrupted
okay.
you.
I just think it would have to encompass the decisions of what, would come about between us and Laura and whatever. But I don't think we could pick and choose. I think, I'm curious about how you came up with the numbers on what the tuition rate is. I don't want an answer now.
Oh, no, I
The
can explain
NRT
it,
is
actually.
published, that's.
But it's worth asking. So basically the way NRT works is there's a state law, it's a formula called the Seneca Falls formula. And basically what that does is when you do that calculation, what that gives you is a maximum. That's not the amount you have to charge, that is a maximum of what you can charge. The reason the law exists is so that a district can't just come up with an arbitrary number and say, tuition's $1 million. So that's a maximum. Now, according to my conversations with the Department of Education Services, there are no districts they're aware of that actually charge the maximum. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the Seneca Falls formula is older than anybody in this room. It hasn't been updated in decades. So it doesn't take into account all sorts of other costs that a school might have that realistically just don't change with the addition of 2 or 3 more students. Things like your internet, things like heating and cooling the building, although that's a little bit different in this case. But anyway, there are lots of other things to factor in. And then you might get to a cost that you think you're comfortable with. But, it has to be attractive to people to actually pay. So again, like I said before, Haldane has a policy. I'm aware of people in our area who have reached out to them and have asked about the price and pursued an RT with them. So if you guys know what you pay Haldane for each matriculating student out of 8th grade, if you're in that ballpark, then it's probably
And
fine.
O'Neill, can I ask you a question about that? Do you imagine that if we adopted such policy and then you applied and your kid was accepted, Laura said, no, I don't like that, Eric Arnold, forget it. Would you imagine that the high school options would be open to you?
I mean, that's the hope, but I mean, that's a little bit further down the line for us as well. So
I would argue that would be that would be a problematic assumption.
It's years away. I mean, that's the sort of thing
For
where...
you, but if we adopt the policy and somebody comes in with an 8th grader, we need to have
I
those
think
answers.
the next group we ought to hear from on this question, because of where this policy would ultimately lead, are all those parents who currently send and intend to send their students over to O'Neill. Because it would be very difficult to justify swapping out or to maintaining O'Neill and also including Lakeland and Howley.
Yeah,
The consequences of this policy with respect to our relationship with O'Neill, which I will speak to in a moment during board member comments, because it is apropos, are not inconsiderable. But listen, we can choose to take this up at some further time if we like, and that's the decision remains for the board. I will speak only for myself and say I have yet to hear the clear and compelling reason for why we should do this as a benefit for the students of Garrison or the taxpayers of the Garrison Union Free School District. I understand the theoretical assertion that the broader Phillipstown community might have a problem to which this might contribute by way of a solution. But there is yet to be, as I said, a clear and compelling articulation of the benefits the students here now, students who are coming in, or our taxpayers. I'm speaking only for myself.
Well, let me, apparently, I want to apologize to you if I have no recollection of doing it, but I know that I got something in an email from you. If I signed something indicating to you that I supported this position, I don't understand it well enough. This would be a complex revision of where we are right now. There are pluses and minuses that I haven't had the bandwidth or whatever, the intelligence to contemplate fully. I mean, I don't understand it well enough. There are arguments for it and against it that I would need to get up to speed on. So apologize if I misled you.
No, that's fair. I appreciate it. Right, just sorry. Another point to what you just said about O'Neill that is really important. I'm glad you brought it up. One of the people who was very supportive of this initiative moved to Garrison specifically because he wanted from Cold Spring because he wanted his children to attend O'Neill. This person is supportive of the NRT notion and is not supportive of consolidation of Garrison and Haldane because that would remove O'Neill as an option. So that is part of the reason why, from those early discussions with the Phillipstown Community Congress a year ago, we started to steer toward NRT because we didn't want to adversely affect Garrison families. That was really important, and so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I would imagine there'd have to be an agreement between Lakeland and, or you have to be an agreement. It would not just be, this agreement would not supersede an agreement with them. You'd have to have a separate agreement.
No, because it's a tuition based. It's not.
Davis is open-ended.
It's
Just
not
says-
changing the doesn't specify where you're from, just says if you're from
Right, so,
outside.
but my
we
point
can
is you'd have to get O'Neill, Haldane already accepts NRT. I'd like to have it'd be nice to have a chat with them about their rationale, but O'Neill would also additionally, just because we come in agreement with you doesn't mean that you would, that the same options would apply.
No, after 8th grade, it's all
Okay.
bets are off at that
Yeah.
point. We understand. This is just the first step. That's
Okay.
it.
What's
So
directionally the tuition charge at Haldane? Do you know?
It's 14,000 roughly.
And I'm sorry, I have no issue in principle with accepting, where there is space availability, accepting an incremental student from wherever, frankly, who's able to pay tuition and benefit. I recognize there's a host of issues we'd have to address, like clear with legal that, you know, what happens if somebody with a special needs kid who's going to cost $250,000 a year applies and we can't afford that, don't take them and they sue us. I don't know what the legality of that is or isn't, but
Or
it's,
who
you know,
acquires or becomes, who is admitted under the standard NRT at 23,000 and subsequently is diagnosed as having,
yeah, that can sue.
and those are not inconsequential either.
So,
But I think the high school issue is another hurdle that would have to be crossed, because I can't understand the kids that would go here till 8th grade and not expect to continue with their friends in whichever place they choose.
the high school issue doesn't worry me, because the parents,
That's
you
another-
decide if you want to send a kid here, then you can move for high school, you can follow your current options. I mean, that's not a,
Just
No.
two last observations. One, actually. The putative benefits identified here to Garrison and to Lakeland, if you ultimately realize the goal of some coordinated exchange at the NRT, doesn't seem to, the Lakeland administration and their business office are very smart people. Presumably, they would have seen something like this opportunity long before we took this up or before you approached us 3 years or so ago. And yet, we've never heard from them on this issue. In fact, to the contrary, when we've discussed this with them at all and Laura has inquired, we have gotten zero interest. So I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical that we would ever achieve what you see as the end result of this, which is a coordinated NRT as between the three districts.
So I can clarify there. From the first meeting I've had with the Lakeland superintendent and subsequent email conversations with Dr. Stone, put it very simply to me. He said that the first step, the only way we can have a conversation or a dialogue is if Garrison has an NRT. That's the first step. Is that there's nothing we can do until Garrison has the policy mechanism to receive money. As you notice on the document, nobody says who's paying the checks to Haldane on their policy. Either it can come from you, it can come from a private citizen. All that is a policy that allows you to cash the checks. That's basically it. It doesn't say where they're from. Dr. Stone told me he's perfectly happy to have a conversation with you guys, but he can't until you guys have an NRT. It's just that simple.
Well, I guess my point was that if the benefits were manifest, as certainly in the petition, they would have occurred to them as well, and Dr. Stone or his predecessors in all the years past might have come to us and said, here's an idea. If you had an NRT, we could have a coordinated rate and we would save on transportation and so forth, and all of those, as I said, putative benefits.
The reason that conversation hasn't come up is really twofold. One is the state pays for 60% transportation, which, as you know, even though Lakeland spends as much money transporting every Garrison student as they do educating them, if you do the math on what they do spend on busing, they're basically the same. The routes probably wouldn't change. It'd be for the first, say 4 or 5 kids or whatever it might be. But long term, yeah, that's a discussion that is idealistic, and it is possible to have it. But nobody can have it if the policy mechanism to receive the money isn't here. But also, Lakeland doesn't see this as a problem. I mean, in the sense
I
that
don't think we do either.
they, that was really uncalled for, but it's
Certainly not inconsistent with anything I've told you so
It was
far.
insulting, and I just
Please.
want to acknowledge that. If Lakeland has, I believe it's $190 million annual budget, somewhere in that range. So this is just one small issue on one of their borders that they deal with. Now, long term, I'm totally willing to give this to you, that, okay, let's say you adopt an NRT, and then we can have that larger discussion about a sort of an exchange program. One of the benefits is, let's say there's a kid who's a much better fit here, who lives, along Old West Point Road east, and what if you have a hockey or music prodigy here who, you guys don't have those kinds of programs? Wouldn't it be great if that kid could then maybe go to Lakeland if that relationship existed? Now, the reason they haven't brought that to you is because they are a massive district. They have bigger fish to fry. At the end of the day, they don't approach this issue, one, because most people in Continental Village who I've spoken to, they're happy in Lakeland. They don't want anything to change. They're perfectly happy with the situation they have. The second reason is that if you do talk about, say, $15,000, $20,000 a year for 5 kids or whatever, that's a drop in the bucket in their budget. It's not a problem for them. That's why they haven't come to you and said, oh, this is a problem, we've got to deal with this. The other problem is that it sets a precedent. They have this issue on 5 other borders. It is possible that if we get to the NRT point, they don't want to have this discussion because they don't want to set a precedent for the issue on other borders they have. They're one of the biggest districts in New York State. So you're right, that is a possibility that we will never get beyond that. But if we could maybe just take this small step and give a chance to some of the families who are part of this community to stay in this community and have you guys get a little bit of extra money in your budget for some good kids who might add some diversity, might add some, a little bit more vibrancy to the school. I don't see the harm in that. And I know that you do, and you seem to, but, I just don't.
Like I said, I'm speaking only for myself here. What I want to be persuaded of is that whatever we do is consistent with our duties first and foremost to the students of the Garrison Union Free School District and to the taxpayers of the district. So unless there's a compelling case for that, it is not sufficient for me anyway, and I won't speak for the rest of the board, to be solving a problem such as it may be for Phillipstown.
That's completely fair. At the same time, I think it's also fair to ask you to take a vote on it, have a further discussion, lay out the process, and if your vote is ultimately no, it's no. That's fine. But, again, I've come to you for years, as you pointed out, and we've gotten no farther because, I don't know why we've gotten no farther. It's really because, basically you sent me on errands in different directions, which I've taken up gladly because I believe in this. And I believe in giving my kids the best opportunity for a great education with their friends in this community. And I'm sorry for feeling that way. Sorry if that insults you. But that's what I'm pushing for, and that's what my neighbors are pushing for, too. So I hope that you be so kind.
Rest assured, I am not. I don't think anyone else on the board is either insulted by the presentation, though. Please.
Well, I hope
you
you be so
needn't
kind.
go away with that impression.
I hope you be so kind as to take up a vote, and if it's no, it's no.
I will leave it to the rest of my board members to decide whether this is
I don't feel
so.
it's close, neighbors here close enough to vote on this issue, number one. Number two, I just need to get educated on this issue. But I'm going to pick up on what Derek said before. In terms of a negative economic impact on this community, you mentioned one plausible scenario in which a kid with special needs would have very large financial requirements. Are there any other ways in which having a non-resident tuition would possibly have a negative impact on taxpayers?
Courtney identified one, which is you get to a threshold at a certain class where you might have you go from having one teacher to having 2 classes for a particular grade. So
As special needs, though, that's being covered now with the high school. If we are sending kids out and there's special requirements, we get the bill. So, that part is dealt with.
there are, just so we understand, there are NRTs that cover, I think it's grades 1 K through 6, 7th and 8th, and high school NRTs. There are also NRT rates that cover special education components. The issue is not an NRT admitting a student with special needs and paying out that higher NRT. It is a student who would arrive at a base level NRT and be subsequently diagnosed as needing ancillary services. Any other questions or comments on this? I will leave it to the rest of you to invest what time and all you think is appropriate to bring yourself up to speed, and if we want to take this up again.
I think,
Let's do
you
it.
know, I think we deserve some time to think about it, and I think, you know, the petitioner deserves a response, so let's give it a month or two and then pick a meeting and say we're gonna make a decision. Bottom line is,
we should discuss it
our
again.
minds get, there's so many things going on. Our minds get focused when we say we need to make a decision. If we decide that, you know, we need to make a decision, we get smarter, we get more focused, and we can sort of process out our issues. It's, you know, it's in a big district, you have different issues than in a small district. Saying no to different people is hard. Saying no because there are 25 students versus 23 students in a class, because if you get to 26, you gotta hire a new teacher. That's hard. It's hard to say that. And it's not just that we're saying no to someone. We're saying no to your neighbor, my neighbor. We're saying no to these people that live down the street. But we're saying maybe no to students that are residing here, you know, that are maybe residing here in some sort of setting, either a school setting or a treatment setting that might need assistance in one way or another. We're gonna have to say no to somebody. The question is, are we comfortable with are we comfortable with, you know, adopting a policy that will allow Laura the flexibility to do that, or are we not? And is saying no a good thing? It's complex. It's in a big district, you say no, it's like, well, I just upset one family, but I got 1,000 in front of me. It's not like that here.
I acknowledge this is hard.
Yeah.
Something I just need to know about this, are you representing that if we said yes to this policy, that you have 11 people ready to write a check?
No, I didn't suggest that at all.
How many people do you have already write a check?
I don't have a number.
You have no idea?
I don't
Not to
have.
put you on the spot, but is that your intention?
My intention is to wait.
School district.
Absolutely, as I highlighted before.
We've sent students there.
Mhm.
We've used their services. It's not, you know, it's there's some positive there. So
Absolutely.
I'm just saying I didn't want anyone to get the feeling, either the press or the public, that maybe, or any people that might overhear this kind of conversation, that this is not this is a discussion about you and your family wanting to choose. It's not a discussion about the quality of the decision necessarily.
That's totally fair, and it's also about my neighbors who approached the Garrison School in the past,
get it.
or its predecessor, who also wanted that same thing and were turned away. So this is not, if you guys ultimately decide no, this is not something that you want to do, this won't be the last you hear of it. There will be another family who comes along in 5 years or 3 years who will ask the exact same thing over again. So I appreciate your willingness to have a discussion about it. I hope it's a robust and lively discussion. I'm here for you guys as a resource on facts. I've spent a lot of time, too much time researching this issue, making a lot of calls to Albany, and I would only ask that this time it's a little different. The first meeting I came to, the minutes of the meeting clearly said, we will do some research over the summer and get back to Mr. Arnold. Of course, no one ever did. And I would hope that this time, if you guys do the research, if you do have any questions, that you'll come back to me. We can have another discussion and you can make a decision. I hope that's where we're headed, just with an honest conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another member of the public?
Susie, you got to introduce yourself if you would.
I'm Susie Tortora. I walked in late, so I'm not exactly sure, but I think this is the conversation about tuition for people that live in Garrison that are in a lake, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking, yes.
Yeah. So I moved here in '86. First I was in Cold Spring. I've been lived in Garrison since 1994. And I think you're absolutely correct. This comes up all the time. My son's 28, so I'm not here for my own personal child's needs. 28, yes, and he started here. When we lived here on Indian Brook Road, we now live off of Old Albany Post on Lake Celeste, and very disappointingly, we were not in the Garrison School District. By that point, my son was already at master's school, so it still wasn't an issue, but I'm really here to support this issue, because I've heard it for over 30 years. It comes up all the time. It seems, I think I don't see how it's not supportive for community members, kids to go to school with the same kids that live in their hometown. And in every other way, Garrison School and the Garrison, Cold Spring, Phillipstown community is such a strong community. I'm a member of the community, I'm a participant in the community on many levels. Lakeland is Westchester. We have nothing to do with anything going on over there as community members. And I think that this, at one point I lived in Continental Village, and I was in the Lakeland School District, and my cross the street neighbor was in the Garrison District. And 3 doors down, the mother, and actually you might have been here at this time, 3 doors down there was a woman who sent her child to kindergarten with my son, because at that point I was still on Edinburgh Road, and halfway through the school kindergarten, and she was told she was in Lakeland, and they had made a mistake, and she would have to leave and then move to Lakeland after kindergarten. So this, I don't know how this boundary line came into place with this border of how across the street neighbors are in Lakeland and then other neighbors in Garrison. But there's something about a community here that's incredibly valuable, and I think people move here for the community. And I know in my Lake Celeste district, families are just putting their kids in private Catholic school and Manatee school and all these other schools because they want the small, they moved here for what this community provides. And so I can't speak from the taxpayer piece, but I can say that I don't see where it's hurting the children of Garrison School to be going to school with kids that are in Phillipstown Rec with them, that are in Phillipstown Camp with them, that are in the Depot Theater program. So that's
Nobody feels that way, though. Nobody on the board
right.
feels
But
that we
you were
don't
saying
want
you were concerned
children.
about how it might affect the children. So how does that piece I need some explanation about? Where is there a problem with children going to school with the same kids that live in their town, as opposed to going to school in a community in a different county than the school that where they live? I think that's the piece where the problem is that when you're having to send your child to Lakeland, which is, as you said, a huge school district, and has nothing to do with who we are and why we're living in Garrison, there's a big stigma. So I'm not sure how it's going to hurt the kids at Garrison School if kids that live in Garrison go to Garrison.
Just to be clear, I wasn't asking how it would hurt the kids in Garrison. I was asking what the direct benefit is.
That they're friends and that they're part of all the other Garrison activities that are.
And
So
with
it's
all
about this
respect,
community. That's what
and I guess what I said earlier about the survey results and the petitions and so forth that brought this issue to our attention was that if this was the pressing issue that Mr. Arnold and you identified, we would have heard more and more regularly from parents and taxpayers, and particularly parents in the Garrison Union Free School District, about this putative problem. And I can say that in my 10 years here, other than Mr. Arnold and now you, Susie, it's not something that parents have come and brought to our attention. And it's not as if we don't provide the opportunity twice a month, every month.
Yeah, but the going thing, even in my, when I sent out, I brought this up over the summer, not knowing you were starting a petition. I'm assuming you're a petition person. And the going thing is, oh, we've tried this so many times, it doesn't work. I mean, the fact that they're not coming here, I don't think is real. I understand when you want to look statistically, you can look at it that way, but I know the conversation. And are any of you in this problem, or do all live in Garrison?
No, we would have to live in
would
Garrison.
have to.
You have to, right, to even be on the board. So I think you can't exactly understand it, because you can reflect on it, but you're not in the situation. So I think that.
We know people, I mean, I know
Right,
people.
you know people. So people talk about it. I mean, it's been a conversation all these years. When I moved out of the Garrison district but stayed in Garrison, by that point, as I said, my son he was already out of it. He was a master, so it didn't matter, but that was a thought. And that is important for our property values and everything else. We have to explain this to people when we're trying to sell our house. Yeah, you're living in Garrison. No, you're not going to be part of the school community. That's different.
Eric, can you answer Ray's question about why other community members haven't come before us?
They think it's futile. That's what I know. I mean,
I would only say, I'm being ever so slightly flip here, we hear from parents all the time on issues that they believe are futile.
I don't know, that's mine.
Yeah, I would argue that all the conversations I've had with people is that it's futile. But I think, again, there's also a level of ignorance there because what they assume the conversation about is moving the district line. And that's
Right.
not what this conversation is about.
Right.
And that, what people don't understand, is really harmful to people in Garrison. That doesn't, I mean, the tax rate in Lakeland is 3x what it is in Garrison. Nobody in their right mind would want to move a district line when all of a sudden everybody in Garrison's tax rates triple overnight. That's insanity. So I don't see how that helps strengthen a community either. I mean, so I think people view it as futile, one, because they don't understand the issue, two, because they, or the implications, two, they think it's about where the district line is drawn, and that's just
Right.
not a conversation that anybody can realistically have.
I think that's a really important point, because when we said instead, if you're paying tuition to go to another school, like the Catholic school, I forget, St. Oswald. Yes, that one, some kids are there, some kids are, so if you're paying to go somewhere, if you could pay to be in the community, I think that, you know you have to pay anyway. I mean, it might be an interesting thing to see how many people live in the Lakeland district that aren't going to the Lakeland or are paying to go somewhere else.
This conversation, though, has gone in a couple of different, I mean, it started when you first came to us about maybe talking to that you wanted to come in tuition. Then it came that you talked to the schools and wanted to try to figure out something that way. So it's kind of been moving around a bit. You know, I think
It's evolved, I would say.
Well, I'm gonna say more moving around a bit, because I think trying to bring it into the whole community isn't necessarily the issue that we need to be discussing. We need to be discussing whether we would take tuitioned children into the school.
I think that's a very fair point. And I think also to Ray's point about what's the benefit, I can tell you this, that some of the people who, in Garrison, who signed a petition, one of the reasons they said they were signing it is, there's no cafeteria here. They said, wouldn't it be great if the school had extra money, so it had a functioning cafeteria, there's hot lunch once a month. So that's the benefit that, it's one of the benefits that could start to be realized. I think some of the parents in Garrison who either signed or didn't sign, but some of the feedback I've heard from them is they said, there's never enough money for the things that we think would be valuable in the school. This is a way to bring more money into the school.
But as
So-
you could see from what Ray said, and what a couple of us said, there's many more pieces of that puzzle.
Sure.
It's not just, okay, we'll open our door, anybody that wants to come in, pay us X amount of money. There's a lot more detail involved in
Absolutely.
this.
That's why I said to the outset that it's
So it has to be
easy and hard.
simplified a little more, and I don't think bringing it in as a whole community issue thing is really the answer. That's my opinion.
So I'll just say, I think for the radio point, from the board's mandate point of view, the decision factors are, it'd be nice to have extra tuition for smaller classes, it would be nice to have extra kids, and we need to weigh that against the complexity and the downside of some of the concerns, risks, I guess, to some people no, to some people liability. I don't think somebody lives across the street from someone who's in the district, that's true of every single school district in the world, because there's a borderline,
They all
houses
have
on one side, houses on the other, and I was a block outside the PS6 school district in Manhattan, you know, because I was on 72nd and Lex instead of Park, right, you know, so that isn't material to me. I think the former is what we should weigh and pick a time frame and get back to you, so we're not going round and
I
round.
do though want to comment to that. In New York City, you can also go to any school. You can apply to, it's a whole different system in New York City.
It's
And
true.
you can choose, even if you're across the street, you can still get into that school. I think here it's specifically about the community. I don't think there are many districts, there are many towns you live in where you don't go to the school in your town. I don't think that we could say that.
No, we went over a list before you got here, Susie, of several towns within a very short drive of here that have multiple school districts within the same town.
Yes, that I understand.
Well,
But
that's
that's not what
basically the
we
challenge
have
that we have here. We have multiple districts within Phillipstown. And my point earlier to Mr. Arnold was, that's not eccentric. That is
There are
fairly
many
typical.
districts where, I mean, just look at the real estate listings that say Yonkers, but Bronxville School District, or whatever, you know, or Mount Kisco, or whatever, it's just, you know, it's,
Okay, but
that's
you
a
have to
non-issue,
admit,
and it's a
this
conversation.
is a more unique community.
Would like to think
I don't
so.
have to agree. I don't know those
Well,
communities, I don't agree with that. I think it's a great community, but I can't speak for this being the
Yeah.
one,
And we also want to be
Google Plus.
sensitive to the fact that, once again, there's a group of residents who live in the town of Putnam Valley.
Right, and they come here.
And they come here and they're part of this school
right.
community, but if we were to say that, the Garrett, that we have some sort of odd cohesion thing here, and they're not part of it, we're othering them.
Oh, we didn't do that, though. We're
And
not
by,
doing that.
and by the way,
Well, we
I'm
should-
generally fine.
The
saying-
argument here
I
is
would
that,
generally fall on the side of take the money and say no when we need to say no. So I don't have any issue with that. I don't think it's the board's job to consider that it's unfortunate for the people
Right.
in one house further down the block. That's always gonna happen. You can move the line by block. And
'Cause
there's
wherever
still
you
gonna be
move it,
people
it's
along
gonna-
there.
yeah.
So,
We can decide at a subsequent meeting if we want to continue this conversation, but I would suggest we're not going to resolve it tonight. Susie, thank you very much. Mr. Arnold, as always, you're welcome. We will decide if and when we want to pick this up again. Any other public comment? Because I know we have an executive session tonight, which is rather full, so if there's no
but we're
other-
here for you.
if there's no other public comment?
Sorry, can I just ask that you give sort of a timeline as to when you can come back, rather than leaving that open-ended?
I'm not prepared to suggest a date when we would have a decision, or whether we even want to consider it again, but I'll leave it. The board can, each board member can propose and put on future agendas any discussion item that they like. So I will leave it to them as we go forward to decide whether, once they have acquainted themselves in a little more depth than some have already said they need. If they want to continue the discussion, they can propose that we add it to the agenda for further discussion. But I don't think
Right.
we're at a position now to
Isn't
tell
it
you
kind
when
of
it would
safe,
be.
isn't it kind of safe to say that we need to kind of get through the referendum before we
Listen,
take on another
my
big
position has
project?
always been, it's an interesting subject, witness the conversation we've had tonight. But the board has limited time and limited resources, and we have bigger issues, from my perspective, more immediate issues that require our attention. One of which is getting a bond issue in front of our taxpayers in a form that will get it approved.
And we're getting up to the holidays, and then it's gonna be the winter, so I don't see us really getting back into this room. No, I think he deserves a little bit
That's
of
as good an answer as I can give right now. Any other?
Before June.
How's it?
Or
Fair.
June's fine,
Before June.
or June's fine.
That's what, that's what I thought,
You could have said before June then. All right.
Before
he
June.
said it.
If there's no more public comment, is there board member comment? We all had a lot to say.
Heck of a job of the Garrison students and both at the honor roll members as well as the students at O'Neill and Haldane at the National Honor Society.
If you let me pick up on that because I did.
Go for it.
Sure. What James is alluding to is that since we last met, I can't speak for Haldane, but I know that the James I. O'Neill High School inducted 30 students into their chapter of the National Honor Society. 10 of those students were Garrison School graduates. It's worth noting that the James I. O'Neill currently enrolls about 493 students, 40 of whom are from Garrison. At O'Neill are Garrison students. 33% of the students who were inducted into the National Honor Society are Garrison graduates. So we are overperforming relative to the rest of the enrollment there, which is an occasion for congratulations, obviously, to the students. It's worth noting, I mention this for two reasons. First, because my dear friend, former board colleague, the late Jim Cannon, would frequently remind us that we are responsible for all of the students of the district, not just the ones we send to O'Neill or to Haldane. The second is also, I think as board members, we can never be reminded too often that we need to take the long view and the broad view of what our mission is, what our students accomplish, even as our agendas frequently and ineluctably pull us into the absolute minutia of running the district. It is helpful, running a building, I should say. It is helpful from time to time to be able to stand back and see what our students actually accomplish on the basis of the preparation that they've received here. So that's my
was the first time at O'Neill? First
It
time?
was,
Yeah.
they were kind enough to invite, they invited
That's great.
Laura and myself,
Yeah.
and I apologize, I thought I had spoken about it 2 weeks in, but the board meetings are.
I was reminded because I saw the piece in the.
No, that's fine, so it
think
was,
it-
it was
I
a
mean,
wonderful
it'll be-
evening, they were kind enough to invite us in, that was the first time I was there, and then we followed with the.
I
tour.
think any schools where our students are going, I mean, to get to Ray's point about, students that go off to O'Neill or Haldane or Masters or wherever, we're still responsible for them whether they're in a public or private setting. We still fund them, whether they're in a public-private setting and different rates and for different issues. It might be useful for us to get to know how our students are faring in, if they're going to Masters or going to Hackley, how they're doing, and I don't know whether it's a useful task for you or for Laura to sort of explore, just getting a sense of how our students are performing. And I think we have a solid relationship, obviously, with Haldane and O'Neill. I think there's this big question mark when we send them off to other private schools, Catholic schools, parochial schools. And one wonders, it might be good to just get a feel for the environment they're in, how they're operating, that sort of thing, so that we know just what our students are doing. That's all.
Any other board member comments? No, we do have executive session, so I'm going to resolve that we adjourn to executive session to discuss collective bargaining matters.
So moved.
And all those in favor?
Totally great. As my students like to say, 100%.